I would.
Trustee Sharp?
Yes, we met last Tuesday on March 4th. And from what I'll just give you the details. We have recommended deletion of policy 5115, which is in our packet on page 101. We have revised two policies during that committee meeting, 3611 and 4300. And those are both in the packet as well. They are on building and grounds and non-discrimination and anti-harassment. And then we proposed a new policy on artificial intelligence. It's on page 107. And then there's a few other policies that we didn't get to, but they will be coming.
Great. So this committee meets monthly.
Yes.
Anything else from any of the other committee members? Okay. Thank you for your work on that committee. The next committee is the DAC committee. Do either of the board members want to give a report on what you did last?
Okay, that committee is on Tuesday morning, immediately after the school board meeting. So tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock. Yeah. We basically went over middle school soccer. We're talking about how many boys and girls that we have that are looking at participating, any equipment that we might need. And I believe probably middle school soccer will probably come to the board in April is what they're looking at, maybe bringing some things for us to look at. We discussed skeet lettering, which is grades 9 through 12. And the policies that need to follow and the qualifications for doing the lettering. We went over girls wrestling. Mostly the biggest thing was we got so many kids that are interested and so many programs going now is the practice times, having room for all of the kids to get in and do the practicing. Looking at equipment as well. We do share equipment with different groups that are doing it. We also have a sportsmanship summit coming up, that parents and students will be attending on that. So,
Trustee Alexander, when you mentioned that middle school soccer would be coming to the board with what request? Do you know?
Pardon me?
What request is middle school soccer going to bring to the board?
Yeah, sounds like.
I can answer that for Trustee Alexander. So we will discuss actually tomorrow morning the proposal for adding middle school soccer as a district sport. With that will be the cost, potential cost, and then what numbers we have as potential activities. And then what will happen then is the DAC committee will then decide to whether to move that forward to the board for their consideration, and that would come before the board at the April board meeting.
Okay, thank you. Anything else for DAC? No, okay. The next board is the Recreation Board. Trustee Phipps or Trustee Hager, do you have anything you want to report?
Oh, I'll go a little, I guess. We had this year around 20 applicants, which was good. Pretty wide range of, I guess, different recreation activities from, basically all 4 communities in our county that as a town-wise put in some applications for different projects. Swimming pool, parks, walking paths, stuff like that. And then a whole bunch of mainly just youth sports in our community. Really without the rec board funds, there's a lot of, the majority of youth sports wouldn't really be operational without these funds. It's just the way our community operates, and so we're thankful for that. There's a lot of different like youth type stuff. It's kind of spread out, not only sports, and there were shooting sports all the way from rodeo to baseball to 4-H, wrestling, little kid baseball. some golf course stuff. And this, unlike last year, this year we had, I think it was around $100,000 that we had to cut. So not everybody got what they were asking for, but we tried to spread it out as best we could. That's all I got.
Thank you. Trustee Phipps, do you want to add anything? Okay. I also sit on the rec board. It was a very long meeting, but a very productive meeting. We ended up allocating $301,617. In addition to what Trustee Hager mentioned, there were projects in Fort Laramie, there were projects in LaGrange that we also allocated monies to. So a special thank you to Wade Brew and Kyle Neiswanger, as well as Trustee Phipps and Trustee Hager. It's a really, really good thing that we're able to do for the district, so, in the county. All right, next, Mr. Van Tilburg, if you'd like to do your presentation for Torrington High School.
I just had a question about, every THS student will graduate in at least one CTE pathway. I was wondering what that looks like on an individual level.
And so, can you talk about your walkthroughs? You mentioned that you had, don't know, the board member audience understand what does the walkthrough look like? It's not just actually you're going in for 30 seconds. There's more to it than that. And then also maybe you could talk about the form that you fill out for each one of them.
I would like to say I appreciate the work that you're doing to build a culture of testing. I think that the seniors probably, I don't know if they've had 3 or 4 and see help to build that. They had message, and so I appreciate the your approach to that.
Yeah. I appreciate Mr. Van Tilburg. You've done an incredible job in the very short time that you have been here. Is there anything that we as the board can do to help support you?
12:30. We'd also like to provide lunch for everybody there. That's what we did over in Alliance when we ran this. But we would like to have a number of breakout sessions and keynote speaker and really just hammer down on, let's win the right way. I always feel like it's a lot better to beat people and do it the right way and leave and have everybody say, man, that outfit was pretty special. And not all the negative stuff that they saw. Leave the locker room better than you found it, say appropriate things for the crowd, and be respectful. And we've got work to do here at THS. Again, I appreciate the liveliness of our student section, but sometimes we step over the bounds, and Mr. Butler and I have to escort people out of the gym. It's not a fun thing to do, but we don't do it.
Well, I personally appreciate that effort because we've sat on that committee together for sportsmanship. I think it's a district-wide issue that needs to be looked at, but I appreciate the extra effort towards it because I think it's important and we need to be proud of where we're coming from and what we're doing. So I personally appreciate that work.
We're going to present it tomorrow. Thank you for your support. We'd like to see it be an every year thing. That's what we did in Nebraska. And that's where we're kind of hoping to go with it. So we'll see what happens.
You'll have to let us know. I don't plan on being there at 7. Let us know how it goes. Any other questions from the board? Thank you, Mr. Van Tilburg.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Oh, okay. All right, next is public comment. I haven't seen any yellow slips, but if anybody in the audience is interested in speaking for 5 minutes, there are yellow slips that you can submit or go ahead and step up to the mic. No one's interested? We will move on to the consent agenda. Before we move through every enumerated piece of the consent agenda, does anyone on the board wish to pull any of the items listed? No? All right, great. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. We will move on to new business. First item on new business is to approve the calendars as presented for submission to WDE by April 1 of 2025 for final approval by the Wyoming State Board of Education. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right. All those in favor of approving the 2025-26 and 2026-27 school year calendars, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. 8.2 on our agenda is for consideration of approval of proposed revisions to the district principal contracts. This is just a slight revision to the principal contracts that's been recommended by our legal counsel. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor of approving the proposed revisions to the district principal contracts, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. 8.3. Consider approval of offering administrator contracts for the 25-26 school year. These are the salaries for the upcoming school year will be determined at the completion of the spring 2025 salary relations. Do you need me to read off every administrator? Okay, you would. All right, we've got Lana Swingholm, the principal of Lincoln Elementary, Tyler Fleischinger for the principal of Trail Elementary, Jim English is the assistant principal, Torrington Middle School, Alan Van Tilburg for Torrington High School, Corey Gilchrist, the principal of LFL, Tim Williams, the principal of Southeast, Matt Daly, principal quarter time at LaGrange Elementary, Lindsay Maxey, principal quarter time at Platte River School, Kevin Derby, the Director of Curriculum and Instruction and Data Management, Trina Nichols, Special Services Director, and Marcy Cates, District Business Manager. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All right. All those in favor of approving the administrator contracts for the 25-26 school year, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, motion carries. 8.4, consider approval of agreement waiving teacher continuing contract status for transition to administer salary schedule. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Kramer, do you mind explaining what this is and what it means?
So in previous contracts, as part of Wyoming interpretation of statute, it was required that if a staff member transitioned from a teaching position to an administrator position, they would still retain the ability to have continuing contract. It was recently recommended by our attorney, because it has been interpreted slightly differently, that we can offer any new administrator who is moving from a continuing teacher contract to an administrator contract, this ability to have a waiving of the continuing contract status for transition to administrator salary schedule. And then that goes with a payment incurred for that transition.
Right, and the payment is required because you have to have consideration for the contract to be valid. Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor of approving the agreement waiving teacher continuing contract status for transition to administrator salary schedule, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Eight point five, consider approval of offering teacher contract for 25-26 school year. This is a contract to Cody Peachy as a physical education teacher at LFL schools K through 12 for the 25-26 school year. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of approving a teaching contract to Cody Peachy as the PE teacher at LFL K through 12, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. 8.6, consider approval of offering a school nurse employment agreement for 25-26 school year. This is an employment agreement to Amber Folk as a school nurse at TMS, THS, and PRS for the 25-26 school year. May I have a motion?
I so move.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving a teaching contract, or excuse me, a nursing employment contract to Amber Folk as a school nurse for TMS, THS, and PRS, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. 8.7, consider acceptance of certified staff resignations submitted by LFL high school teacher, English teacher, Shelby Hanlon, and the resignation submitted by Lincoln Elementary first grade teacher, Jamie Brimmer. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving the resignations of Ms. Hanlon and Ms. Brimmer, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. 8.8, consider approval of memorandum of understanding with Eastern Wyoming College for the 24-25 school year. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Kramer, do you mind discussing the nature of the MOU?
So
You're dead. You're good.
So what this will allow us to do is have that continuation and sharing of courses either through the dual enrollment process, working with EWC on those courses.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the MOU with EWC for the 24-25 school year, please signify by saying aye.
I,
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, motion carries. 8.9, consider approval of contracting with Wyoming Educators Benefit Trust for district health insurance coverage for the 25-26 school year. May I have,
I so move.
is there a second? Thank you. And so this is renewing the contract to provide employees with health, dental, and vision insurance, correct?
That is correct.
Sorry. Any other discussion or questions?
Madam Chair,
Yes, trustee Sharp.
I'm just curious, do we do any kind of search for different kinds of insurance? I just wonder what the process
Yeah.
was.
I'll move this closer. We're gonna eat the mic here. Each year, part of our HR department takes a look at what those comparables are. The challenge in Wyoming is there's only 3 options.
Right.
And that makes it very difficult. As we looked in previous years, the state option regarding funding from the state is probably the most equivalent because they have typically the fewest percentage increases because it's operated by the state, and that's what drives some of that funding model. The other piece is then not through WEPT, but then through WASA. Very similar, but WEPT operates through Blue Cross Blue Shield. And then the other, Hollywood, is the WizMate, thank you, is who they operate through. We have done some comparables, especially in the last few years. This year, we kind of saw that it was very similar in nature to the others, but it's important to kind of take a look. The transition, insurance companies have made it difficult to make that transition, and they've made that difficult for a reason. They want you to stay and they don't want to move in things, but we try each year. Only does that. Okay, and then
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving contracting with WEPT for district health insurance 25-26, please signify by saying aye. Okay. Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. 8.1, approval of contracting with renewal. So moved. There's
Second.
in the total amount of $25,009.60, correct?
correct.
Okay, and this comes from general fund?
Yes.
Discussion or questions? Okay, all those in favor of approving of contracting with Frontline Education for subscription renewal in the amount of $25,009.60, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. 8.11. Consider approval of contracting with Writings Revolution for professional development services. This is it's not to exceed $17,850. It's funded by Title II and Why Built Bill Grant. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion?
So this was, we've already trained about 60 to 70 staff members. So this is a continuation of some of that training that we've done. We're trying to get all elementary teachers trained, all sped or intervention teachers trained at all grade levels. And then we're looking specifically at secondary content teachers in ELA, science and social studies specifically, where there's quite a bit of writing done. One of the main pieces, like at the lower grade levels, that really starts about trying to form like perfect sentences and like using transitions and a lot of terms that Mr. Strampy would probably be able to speak to a lot better than me. But like appositives, subordinating conjunctions, things like that, kind of creates a similar framework and common language from teacher to teacher, especially at the secondary level. So we're hoping that's why we're really trying to push to get more content as well, so that kids, as they go from classroom to classroom, can have a common language. Teachers can use common expectations around some of the writing, and there's even some reading comprehension pieces built in as well. So as a former content teacher, I wasn't taught how to teach writing, so it gives some tools in the tool belt for teachers that probably don't come to that naturally.
Preschool.
That's the, yeah, especially in content levels and grade levels, like as we continue to get people, and like that we are good capacity now. And essentially I created a list of additional people. So this is basically rounding out the list to get everybody done through the spring, summer, or maybe one final session in the fall if we have some conflicts with dates and things. So
So by of 25.
by the, yeah.
Okay, so by the fall of 2025, every school.
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. One, reconsider approval of a previous agenda item. For special. May I have a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
I'd like to give a little bit of explanation of what we're doing here, folks, so that you can understand the why. So we're asking for to asked to ratify previous vote that took place quite some time ago, over 10 months ago. This is the result of messages, emails, as has Mr. Kramer. There's been a ton of back and forth with Mr. Peterson's attorney. There are significant attorney fees incurred as a result of this, and a significant amount of time wasted on this. But as a result, we want to protect the school district and make sure that if an audit is ever conducted, that we have ratified this vote to make sure that we are protected and covered. This had to do with a vote that occurred, as I said, 10 months ago, to approve a contract with Premier Environmental for asbestos abatement of the THS Tech Ed building in the amount of $98,050. At that particular meeting, the reason that it is being questioned is that there were 2 members via Zoom that day and 3 sitting in the boardroom. Trustee Phipps had moved to approve the contract with Premier Environmental. Trustee Alexander seconded, and the motion was carried unanimously. But we are required to vote on it again to ratify it. Okay. Is there any questions or discussion? Okay. All those in favor of approving the previous agenda item from May 28th of 2024 as discussed at the special meeting, please signify by stating aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain?
Aye.
We have 3 abstain. Trustee Sharp, Trustee Alexander. Then motion. I have. It just changed. I have five. Failing us tonight. All right. 8.13, this is a very similar situation where we're being asked to consider approval of a previous agenda item from July 17, 2024 special meeting. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? So just explanation, the board is being asked to ratify a prior vote on July 17, 2024 to approve maintaining adult and a la carte meals prices for the 24-25 school year as presented. That meeting was over. At that particular special meeting, we had 5 present in the boardroom. More than a week that I would be attending by Zoom. Trustee Hager moved to approve maintaining the adult and all for 25 school years. State that there is a federal program in place and parents need to be responsible for their children. Program would make people more dependent on the school district. But voted nay. The motion carried. Any other discussion or questions? This also was records record back and forth with Ms. Any further? Yes, Trustee Goulart.
This particular item is related.
I'll let them answer that.
No, this item is not. This item is only related to adult meal prices
And
and a la carte.
can you tell the audience what CEP is? I'm sorry.
It's our community eligibility provision. It is the program in which we partner with the USDA, and we are currently not charging for meals for students in all of our buildings across the district.
If I remember correctly, it was actually at the next regular scheduled meeting that the board voted on the free meals across the district. Was it the same meeting? Okay,
It was at the budget hearing, yes.
okay. So that was approved at the same meeting then in July, Trustee Goulart. Any other questions? We will do our best. With that, all those in favor of approving the reconsideration of the previous agenda item from July 17, 2024 special meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstain?
Aye.
So the abstains are Trustee Sharp, Trustee Alexander, and Trustee Goulart. The motion carries. 8.14, consider approval of purchase exceeding $5,000 of cabinetry for Torrington High School. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay, so this is for classrooms. They were kind of on a rotation in the amount of $11,884.50 from the capital construction funds. All those in favor of approving the purchase exceeding $5,000 of cabinetry for THS, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. 8.15. Consider approval of contracting for the lighting upgrades at Lingo Fort Laramie Middle School and high school gyms. May I have a motion?
Also move.
Is there a second?
Second.
This is to approve the electric for the installation of fixtures and lights in the middle school gym and installation of LED bulbs in the high school gym in the amount of $15,300 from the major maintenance fund. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving upgrades at LFL Middle and High School gyms, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. 8.6, consider approval of contracting for THS Auditorium Asbestos Abatement Project. May I have a motion?
I so move.
There's a second. Any discussion? So this is approving contracting with this services team for the abatement of THS Auditorium in the total amount of $3,100 on contract being awarded at the May 5 board meeting for the THS. Mr. Van Tilburg, just any discussion? Okay. All those in favor of approving for THS Auditorium Asbestos Abatement Project, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. 8.17, consider approval of contracting for painting at Platte River School. May I have a motion? Is there a second?
I'll second.
And so, Mr. Kramer, this is at the EWC building, but it's part of our lease. We are required to maintain the building, correct?
In this aspect of this improvement, yes, this would be part of our expenditure for painting of that.
Okay, and so the painting is in the amount of $14,508.
Correct.
Does that come out of general fund because that is not our building?
Madam Chair, members of the board, in my memo, I tried to kind of elaborate a little bit. If we don't own the space, then we don't receive major maintenance money for that space. Because we don't receive major maintenance money, we're not able to use major maintenance money from another building at that school. That's why it's general fund.
Thank you. Dybach was asking if there's any type of I don't even know what you would set some type in our lease if we do the painting.
There currently is not anything within the agreement and in that aspect for major changes or in improvements, EWC we have partnered with, and then they add that portion. But the painting piece was something of a choice for us in this situation.
Oh, sure.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I can share that we've requested that they redo the flooring up there. That would be a bigger project than we would want to tackle. But this is something that the teachers up there have done some painting themselves, but this is a much bigger project than what they want to take on.
Sure. Any other discussion or questions? Okay. All those in favor of contracting for painting at PRS in the amount of $14,587, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Just as a side note, we still have quite a bit to go through our agenda. Do we want to dismiss our student reps or are they? I feel bad, you guys, on a weeknight making you stay late for this. I know it's super exciting, but it's 8 o'clock. Absolutely, absolutely.
I saw the excitement as
I know, they're like, yes, there's our out. Please take it. We will not be offended by that at all. And feel free to sneak out at any time, you guys. Thank you. All right, not you guys. We're getting there.
Okay.
8.18, consider approval of contracting for 2025 district tree spraying. May I have a motion?
I so move.
Oh, now everybody's anxious for it. All right.
Val can have it.
Trustee
Make a
Sharp,
difference.
and I'm gonna guess your second is
I'll second.
trustee Chairs. This is approving contracting with Long's Tree Spraying for district tree spraying in the total amount of $14,874 from general fund. Is there any discussion?
Is this something that should be funded out of major maintenance?
Madam Chair, members of the board, major maintenance is set aside for those upgrades. Anything that is on a regular basis, such as a maintenance contract or tree spraying, does not get approved under major maintenance. So you will see here coming up in the next couple months, a maintenance contract with Longs for our HVAC buildings. And that will be a general fund as well. So very, very good question.
Yeah.
General fund is more like the operations and maintenance, and major maintenance are those larger remodel, updates, upgrades.
Good question, though. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving contract with Long's Tree Spraying for district tree spraying, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. 8.19, consider approval of deleting district policy 1300/5115 on persistently dangerous schools. May I have a motion?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
And trustee Sharp, I assume this is the policy that you referred to in your committee report.
That is correct, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor of deleting district policy 1300/5115 on persistently dangerous schools, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. 8.20, consider approval of proposed revisions to district policy 3621, buildings and grounds maintenance. May I have a motion?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
This is to approve the proposed revisions to district policy 3621 as presented on introduction and first reading. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor of approving proposed revisions to district policy 3621 buildings and grounds maintenance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. 8.21, consider approval of proposed revisions to district policy 4300/5100, non-discrimination and anti-harassment procedure. May I have a motion?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
So this is to approve the proposed revisions as presented on introduction and first reading by the policy committee. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor of approving the proposed revisions to district policy 4300/5100 non-discrimination and anti-harassment procedure, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. 8.22, consider approval of proposed new district policy 4345/5129, artificial intelligence, as presented on introduction and first reading. May I have a motion?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Would someone from the policy committee like to give us just a really brief rundown of what this AI policy encompasses? Trustee chairs? No.
Oh, boy. My kid's sitting next to you.
I know.
I'm gonna throw someone else under the bus. Mr. Derby, would you like to take this one? I would speak to it, but you explained it very well in our committee meeting.
So essentially, there's been numerous staff members who have come to me about the use of AI, both with students and for staff. I think as we move through time, AI is, I mean, it's here and it's here to stay. So I think this policy addresses both some training needs for staff, as well as addressing some appropriate uses for students, like how staff can use it with their students in the classroom, and addresses some ways that we can set what those expectations are. So it just kind of provides a framework of this is how we are going to view AI and the use of that and how we and gives teachers some parameters and students some parameters of here's some appropriate uses versus inappropriate uses of it, and also provides for some training for staff. So.
Great, thank you.
Madam Chair, I would like to commend the committee because I use AI every day in my job, and higher education institutions are expecting that students are going to have the ability to use it responsibly and to use it to their advantage. And so I think this is a good policy. It's a really good start. And so I would like to say I think you did a great job.
Thank you. Trustee Strampy?
Madam Chair, I participated on the committee that was drafting the AI policy also, and I just wanted to echo all of that and just say I felt like it was really good to have kind of a continuity between the secondary level and then thinking about what I, again, in higher education, am expecting of students related to AI. And I think also lots of times we just think of it as how can we control it or eliminate it. But this policy really was like defining some things, right? Because even some of the terms like generative AI versus something else, right, can be kind of confusing. And so we really focus on clarifying some of those things too.
Great. Thank you for your work on that. Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor of approving proposed new district policy 4345/5129 for artificial intelligence, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. 8.23, consider approval of contracting for renewal of district transportation Wi-Fi service. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
And so this is to approve renewing the district transportation smart bus Wi-Fi connectivity service with Khajiit from July of 25 to June of 26 in the amount of $26,947 funded by U-Rate. Is there any discussion or questions? All those in favor of approving contracting for renewal of district transportation Wi-Fi service, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 8.24, consider approval of contracting for renewal of network switch and access point licensing. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? And so this is approving contracting with Converge One for Cisco Meraki, licensing for 90 district network switches and 150 district Wi-Fi access points in the total amount of $60,950.72. 70% of this is funded by your rate, 30% funded by general fund. Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair, can we just get a quick high-speed pass at what it is exactly we're doing with the
Mike, would you be able to tell us in non-technical terms what you're trying to do?
That answer your question?
that's probably as clear an answer as we probably want to get into. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of contracting for renewal of network switch and accessing point or access point licensing, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. 8.25, consider approval of changing the regular board meeting start time from 7 PM to 6 PM. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? So this is something that I'd asked the board to consider previously. Tonight's not a good night for this because normally we're here super late till 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night. For some reason tonight we scooted right through it. But it is something I'm asking the board just to consider. These board meetings get to be very long and we are making very big decisions. I personally get very tired by 9 or 10 o'clock at night to be having these discussions. I don't ever want to feel rushed because we're worried about the late hour. And the other piece is too, we've been we've been traveling all over the district to different schools. Sometimes they are longer. Poor trustee Phipps has been all over the place. They're the longest for him. And it's late at night, especially in the winter. So just something I'm asking the board to consider. So is there any other discussion?
I guess I like the idea. The only concern I do have is if we set the time, I mean, I would guess 50% of our meetings, we add something at the beginning, either an executive session or
Yeah.
a short work session or something along those lines. I just don't think we should add that before 5 o'clock. So if we started at 6, I mean, I think, 5:15 or something would be about the earliest we should ask people to be here with work and.
I think that's a fair request. Any other discussion?
I guess personally, I think some, the meetings go late and they kind of cut into our nights, but setting it earlier, I'm afraid would cut into our days too. And that's why I think I'd rather have it stay at 7 PM personally.
Any other discussion? Trustee Goulart?
I would agree with trustee Phipps, and also my first concern would be the inconvenience that it could put on the public that might want to attend a meeting. Because to make a meeting by 6 or 6:15, depending on where you live, you might be scrambling to get the kids picked up, to get dinner on the table. 7 PM is just works out for lots of different reasons, I believe. And if we have to go late, sometimes I would not object to a motion to bring in some pizza if that's what we need to keep going. But I'm a big fan of the 7 PM start time.
Any other discussion?
Madam Chair, I also prefer the 7 PM. I do believe in the interest of our staff that may want to attend, that they too have children and need to be able to get their children fed and get home and be able to have time to make the meetings. I would love to see more staff here. So I'd like to show them that we're encouraging them to be present.
Trustee Chairs?
The city of Torrington just recently moved their meeting time earlier. I don't remember exactly what time it starts, 5:36 maybe. One of the reasons they did that was for their staff, because that makes for a very long day for staff to stay through until 8, 9, 10 o'clock. And I know one of the concerns was that the public would not be able to make the meetings. And I cannot speak for the city of Torrington, but I do not think they have encountered that problem. And the county commissioners meet during the middle of the day and people still find a way to make that work. I agree with Chairwoman Mueller that the later we go, the less my brain is functioning, as is illustrated by my stumbling words right now. So I personally would be in favor of moving it earlier.
I guess just on that too, my thoughts were to the staff from Central. I mean, these guys are hauling all the equipment to these meetings and they've got to clean it all up at night and pack it all back. And that makes for a very, very long day for all of them as well. And so I had that in mind. Additionally, I too have kids. I too take my children to baseball and whatever practices they need. I too have a full-time job. Tomorrow morning is always very rough after we've been here very, very late at night. Trustee Chairs and I have spent hours this week preparing and last week preparing for this meeting. A lot goes into it behind the scenes. And I'm not stating that, I'm not stating to be a martyr. I knew what I signed up for. But these meetings are long and they really do take it out of you. And so that's why I wanted to ask the board to consider the 6 PM start time. I also wanted to bring it to a vote so we can stop having the discussion, frankly. And if the board votes it down, that's fine too. We'll continue with the 7 o'clock. So Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor of approving a change in the regular board meeting start time to 6 PM instead of 7 PM, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Any abstain? So it's 5-4. So the motion does not pass, fails.
No.
Oh, no? No, it does pass. We've got
It
5.
passed.
It does pass. Okay, you need to know the nays? Okay, sorry.
Tony.
Trustee, oh, sorry. You have something we don't have.
Tony, trustee Gouillard, trustee Sharp, trustee Alexander, and trustee Phipps.
All right. So I was wrong. The motion passes. So our next board meeting will begin at 6 PM. Okay, next is board topics for discussion. This is a time for board members to seek input from each other on timely topics. 9.1 is discuss scheduling a preliminary budget board work session. So before we get into scheduling and all of this, does anyone have any topics that they want to discuss with the board? Trustee Hager?
Yeah, I just thought, I've been thinking the last few months about, just the dollar amount that for board approval of purchases. Right now it's set at $5,000 and I don't know, Marcy, how many years it's been $5,000, but I think quite a long time. And I just think with, just the relevance of how much everything costs nowadays, $5,000 is a drop in the bucket. And, this month there's not a whole lot on there. There's a couple, but some months there is quite a few items, and just some of it I think is just, it's just not warranted to go through the effort and put it on our agenda. I mean, we don't really need to know as a board if we're buying $8,000 worth of cleaning supplies, that kind of stuff. It's just, and the information won't be hidden. It'd just still be in the monthly bills. It just won't have to be put on this and we won't have to have discussion about it. But so I don't know what everybody else's thoughts were. I thought just have a conversation about it and possibly raise it up a little bit.
Ms. Case, how long has it been at $5,000?
Madam Chair, members of the board, I've been in this position since 2008, and our purchasing guidelines have been the same since prior to that. I could, I can research what other districts are doing. I could recommend that if we want to adjust maybe what the consent agenda looks like, we could use it for that. It really is your call. What we have right now with the $5,000 is anything up to $5,000. Mr. Kramer has the approval for that. So, what I would recommend is if you do increase, it's going to be a policy change. But increasing it above 5,000 would more than likely increase Mr. Kramer's authority. What we have right now is myself or building principals can approve up to 1,500. Between 1,500 and 5,000, Mr. Kramer approves, and then anything over that comes to the board.
What are your thoughts?
What I would recommend is bringing that to policy committee and having further discussion along with the research from other districts and whether our amount is set. And then if the policy committee would so choose to move that forward to the board can have a example in the background of the research if that would be meet that need.
I think it's a great idea, Trustee Hager. It allows the administration to conduct business without having to bring it back through the board. All of those things would still be listed in our monthly bills and, full disclosure that would be available, but we don't need to vote on everything.
Marcy, would that speed up sometimes some of that stuff getting paid for? Um,
It wouldn't speed up the payment because all checks are approved through here. The only exception are reimbursements for meals for drivers or per diem. But what it would do is it would speed up, in particular, when you mentioned cleaning supplies from Bluffs. Right now, for instance, I received some purchase orders after the agenda was finalized to the tune of about $12,500 that will sit until we have the next board meeting for those to be approved. And those people know what the rules are and what the guidelines are. And, they say that they're getting it to me at whatever interval they can, but it would speed up the receipt of some items.
Any other topics that the board would like to discuss? Ms. Cates, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know that a very hot topic right now has been what's going on in the legislature and how that's going to impact us as a district. You even got a sheet ready. Awesome. Mr. Kramer told, I love it. I love it. I asked him to. So just wondering like how that impacts us with our budget and so forth. We've got a lot of big decisions to make here pretty soon pertaining to budget. So can you kind of give us a brief rundown of what your analysis is and how you think the legislature has impacted us so far?
I can't share with you as far as what it will do to Goshen County School District because I'm still working on those items, but there are three different bills that are worth noting right now in regards to what school finance might look like. The first one is the recalibration bill, and that came about based upon the two sides not being able to reach agreement on a supplemental budget. The recalibration bill is where they put ECA, external cost adjustment, into the actual House bill, and it did reach concurrence in both sides. I've not seen yet where the governor has signed it, but it appears that he will. This provides an external cost adjustment of 8.5% for both professional labor and non-professional labor. Professional labor being certified staff, non-professional being classified staff. A adjustment of 1.067% to educational materials, and actually a reduction of 6.285% for utilities, or what they call energy. I like this in that it's the additional recommendation that was presented. The reason why I like it is that the first version of the supplemental budget had a ECA exclusively for teachers and a separate for professional staff. This provides some equality to all staff in the school finance, as opposed to what some legislatures have tried to do in micromanaging. So the positive of this is that there is an external cost adjustment. The downside to this outside of legislation is that we have a declining enrollment. So the two kind of work together or against each other. One bill that didn't pass was moving the ADM from 75% to 80% for what constituted a full-time student. And what that means is that a student presently has to be enrolled at least 80% to be considered a full-time student. The bill was actually decreasing it to 75%. So we would have received additional funding for those students just kind of on the cusp between those two percentages. That did not pass. The other bill that did pass, and I believe the governor actually has signed it, is a CTE bill. And it breaks out the CTE, we receive for those career technical education. We receive funds based upon the number of our teachers in a FTE status that are teaching those CTE pathways that Mr. Van Tilburg spoke about earlier. We're receiving funding in the block grant. The thing about the block grant is it comes to this body in the budget and you decide how you're going to spend it. This is breaking it out into a categorical grant to where we're being micromanaged and it has to be spent on that particular purpose to be able to receive those funds. So it appears that the funding is going to be very comparable, but it's going to separate us between the block grant and a categorical grant. So those are really the three finance bills that I have at this time.
Okay. And we'll be discussing the preliminary budget board with the work session on March 31 at 6 p.m. And that'll be before the April 4 Salary Relations Committee meeting.
And at that time, I'll have a PowerPoint that I'll present that will show what these various pieces look like and what our projected funding looks like.
Great.
Will that time change with the change of our meeting time?
I don't
No.
think so.
Okay. Because that's a work session just for that. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's just that.
Gotcha.
Any other topics that the board would like to discuss? One last thing that I'd like the board to just think about, we don't need to make any decisions, obviously, is after next month's meeting at Lincoln, we're done traveling, being a traveling show. We need to discuss as a board whether or not we want to continue this. If we want to continue going to a different school every month, or if we'd like to go back to Central for a while. So please give that some thought so we can discuss that at next month's meeting. For future meetings, we've got Salary Relations Committee meeting on Wednesday, March 19th at 12:30. And again on Friday, April 4th, starting at 8 a.m. The next regular board meeting will be Tuesday, April 8th at Lincoln Elementary. And last is the public officer training sessions for newly elected board members scheduled for March 27th and 29th. WSBA will be offering public officer training for newly elected board members. This is required by state law to be completed by December 1 of 2025 and only needs to be completed once. All right, Mr. Kramer, superintendent's report.
So I'll just bring up first student enrollment and where we're at there. So really kind of going, again, I try to color code as much as possible. Green is where we're at with the enrollment projections from month to month. On the right side is the previous month. This is January. Column F here is the current month. Anytime there's green, that is indicated an increase from the previous month. And so as you can see, LaGrange, Lincoln Fort Laramie High School, were slightly up. Lincoln Fort Laramie Elementary and Middle School was slightly decreased from the previous month, and no building fluctuated more than 2.0 ADM. Again, ADM is figured on that reference to the 80% full-time student. So what 80% equates to is a student, if they take 7 out of 8 classes that we offer, they are considered 1.0. And so that's where that funding model comes in. Lincoln Elementary was slightly increased. Southeast Elementary, Southeast High School, Southeast Junior High was all increased. Trail Elementary, slight decrease. Torrington High School, a slight increase. And Torrington Middle School, slight decrease. Platte River School remained the same. And then we had a slight increase from the previous month of 1,579, last month 0.88 to 1,580.57. The key there is when you look in previous years at this time, so last year at this time we were 1,608. The previous year to that we were 1,617. The interesting piece there, as you go back 3 years, it was less than where we're currently at 1,570. So there is a lot of fluctuation in our enrollment, and then hence that also correlates to our funding. The next piece that I'll talk about is the legislative update. Really, there were there was over 107 bills related to education this year in the legislative session. That was drawn down dramatically. Probably the one that will most affect and need to be discussed at the board level is House Bill 172 and the repeal of gun-free zones. We are going to be getting guidance from the WASA organization along with our school attorney into potential policies and things to provide us more information on that, but more information will be forthcoming. That would be something that law goes into effect on July 1st. And so we'd be looking at to have some guidance policy centered around that in place for the next school year. Then another big news that was after our meeting last month was the lawsuit that had a decision, and that was with the Wyoming Education Association, which also included 8 school districts that joined the lawsuit against the state regarding the funding model. Those districts were Albany County School District, Campbell County, Carbon County, Laramie County, Lincoln County, Sweetwater County School District number 1 and number 2, and Uinta County School District number 1. The interesting piece there, overwhelmingly, the decision by the judge was made in favor of the schools and the organization. What the judge found in his 183 pages, which was pretty significant, the funding model that is currently in place is unconstitutional. The model is not cost-based as it is stated in the Constitution. The model does not account for inflation. The salaries are not adequate to recruit and retain personnel. The facility side is unconstitutional by not assessing for educational suitability. And the facilities finance system has allowed unequal and inadequate facilities to exist for too long. The system has failed counselors, SROs, nutritional programs, and computers for every student. Another piece that was really interesting, the court identified 3 witnesses that have credibility issues, namely Dr. Cedar, Dr. Taylor, and Dr. Stoddard. These are the 3 main witnesses relied upon by the state. Overwhelmingly, it was clear that the legislature has not done their job in this ruling and funded schools properly. This could in turn affect the recalibration for funding in the next legislative session. And so it will be very interesting to see. Of course, with any court ruling, this could be appealed, and that could be a possibility. And that takes the time for appeal is 30 days upon that ruling. And that was, I believe, on February 27th or 26th when that ruling came. And so there were 30 days from that date to determine if the state would appeal that. The judge did maintain jurisdiction until the constitutional violations have been remedied. This could drastically affect the funding model going into recalibration next year. But I think it is really noteworthy and appreciative of those school districts and the Wyoming Education Association in finding out what really is held to that constitutional status regarding funding. Wyoming is a unique state. There is a guarantee in the Wyoming State Constitution that we will appropriately fund education. Again, there's a lot of reasons why Wyoming is one of the best states. That's another one on there because not all states have that forethought and realization of how important education is. And I appreciate the work of those in power during that time to put that into the Constitution, and then also the work that has been done by so many on that, because it was an extremely big lift, and it will impact education in the state of Wyoming for many years to come. But that was something of very importance, and will be, I'm sure, much more we'll hear about going forward. The other piece that I have is the district copier lease information. We are putting out our RFPs, and we'll be hearing information, and that will be something that will be coming on a future meeting. We also, unfortunately, because of how everything fell, and I'll have Mike kind of speak to the item, but what I'm looking at is a special one item meeting, and potentially looking at March 24th. This would be a very short meeting, obviously, because it would be due to one meeting, but it would be to approve the purchase of an E-rate item. There's a very tight timeline on E-rate purchases. And so there's the piece where you get approval to get those items in and compare that information, but then it sets a timeline on the back end where that decision has to be made. So the materials and items were coming in too late to be part of this meeting, but unfortunately, the decision has to be made before March 26th. Mike, would you be willing to talk about what that item pertains to? So the board will have some information regarding that. No? Yeah? Yeah, good.
So, with the E-rate,
So we'd be looking at, thank you, Mike, a March 24th availability at 6 o'clock, if we could get a quorum for that to make that decision. The only item that I saw on the schedule, Torrington Middle School will be having a concert, but I did not see any on the district calendar regarding any other conflicts.
Can I ask just a quick question?
Yes, please.
So we got a lot of meetings in March. Is it possible to do the preliminary budget board work session on the 24th so that we have one meeting instead of two meetings just a week apart? Or is Marcy going to want to hurt me for
Yes,
asking?
I believe yeah, that would be a difficult challenge.
Is that too much to ask? Yeah. What about the other, so the other thought that I have is what about appearance by Zoom for board members? Since it's one item.
That has part of our leadership governance, that would be allowable for those who would like to Zoom in to get a quorum, that we don't have a set, or it can be right there within the facility too.
I mean, because we have salary relations the 19th, then this the 24th, then the next meeting the 31st. That's a lot.
And if it wasn't for the 26th deadline,
Right.
we would push that. That's the problem with the challenge
Sure.
with the
Sure.
deadline there.
Thoughts on the 24th? Anybody else? Yeah.
I can make it work.
Okay, so we can make the 24th work, but I am throwing the option out that our board governance does allow us to appear by Zoom if it's too much of an inconvenience, given that it's one agenda item.
Thank you for accommodating us. Appreciate that. And that is everything that I had in regards to my report, unless there were any questions. Oh, no, you know what? No, don't. Oh, my gosh. I forgot my good news.
Oh,
I've been waiting for this for how many months too? Gosh. The data that I was sharing, I almost forgot that. So you'll remember that I've referenced this as the as the principals were presenting last month in regards to our data. I gotta pull this. Okay, there we go. Yep, I'm gonna try here. So as you can see with all my colors here, I'm going to just go quickly, briefly over each column represents a time period in which we have our assessments: fall, winter, and spring. This one illustrates the kindergarten through fifth grade, and this is Ames Web. My first line is district and then goes down kindergarten through fifth grade. This is the district level. We started back in fall of 2020, screening students. And at that time, 48.35% of our students in that fall were reading at grade level. We moved progressively over that time to this winter and spring. This winter, you'll notice, and I like why I color coded is even if you can't see the numbers, you can see it's all green here. For the first time since we've really tracked this, all levels made a 10% increase over the percentage of students that grew over 10 percentile points as a class. So this is very excuse me, not the individuals increased and were at grade level there. So for the district this winter, 63.02% were above that. You'll notice that as a district last winter, we were 65%, but where our starting point was 47%. So over 10% grew, which is pretty phenomenal. The other piece that I scroll down to is that when I go down to classrooms, and this is the reading, 58.97% of the classrooms increased their goal over 10% of our students. And this was the highest that we've ever achieved as a district. Also, one important piece this last spring, the fifth grade, as we look up this progression, from second grade to fifth, they increased every year in the percentage of proficient. In the spring of 2021, when they ended as second graders, 70% of those students were reading at grade level or above the 40th percentile. And in this last spring, 85.91%. Our goal is 95% of students. So this is something that just illustrates the hard work that our teachers are doing, our instructional facilitators, our early childhood teachers, our curriculum director, and of course also within the area of special services, because this includes all students, including those with IEPs. And so they've done a phenomenal job there. When I go over to then STAR, you'll remember that this was the first time we did district-wide benchmark assessments at this level. So this is something that was very new. In the third through fifth grade, it has been regular occurrence that we've done this. You can see by the color pattern here, I just did the same goal orientation of 10% of students increased. If it's in yellow, we didn't reach that 10% goal, but in the third grade, we did. as a district, we did increase by 4%. And then there were other grade levels, eighth grade, and the seniors also increased they started this fall at 40%. We're meeting above the 50th percentile. This winter, 55% were above the 50th percentile on STAR. This last column is the growth. The highest increased achievement were over 50% of the students in grade 10 increased their percentile rank. Then if I go over to math, we have not been as classrooms tracking this as closely over the years, but the same type of thing here. As a district, 76.4% of our students. You can also see highlighted that the large amount of green indicates those who met the goal. There only one grade level that did not quite meet it, and they were just short. In the fall, this is the difficulty though, they started with 70% of their students were at grade level already in the fall after that summer break, the highest in the district in regards to grade levels, and they still increased it to 79.31%, but that goal is 10%. In the cohort groups, you can see that increase. The fifth grade as of last year, over 91% of the students in fifth grade that are current sixth graders scored proficient on math Ames Web, which is really impressive in the work that that the teachers have been doing. And then I'll just jump over to STAR math again. For the 6 through 12, this is the first time getting into that situation in which we've really tracked it. When you look at grades 3 through 5, all elementary grades did increase that 10%. We did not have a grade level increase 6 through 12 over that 10%. We did have one slight decline from fall to winter, but as Mr. Van Tilburg referenced, getting that 6 through 12 assessment culture and wanting to be very successful is something that we're working on. 6 through 12 as that benchmark. We did have in the 8th grade though, close to 60% of those students increased their score one percentile rank or more from fall to winter. So some very exciting data to report. We'll report more in June, but I know the elementary staff has been working extremely hard on those Ames Web components. And again, I know the principals and teachers are creating that testing culture at the high school and middle school levels, and hope to see and be able to report those increased achievement numbers as we go into the spring. But yes, glad I remembered that because that was
I'm glad you shared it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations, you guys. That's
lots of good work going on.
awesome. Okay, with that, we're adjourned.
You didn't even let me.
That was fast. I don't want to give him an opportunity.